There's not a whole lot of videos out there on the Mahindra 4110. I recently messed up my four-wheel drive on the front end here. Lost my front tires pulling after I've been pushing on some trees I probably shouldn't have been. But just kind of want to make a quick video on how to take this apart, examine for the broken front axle. Basically how to put it back together. I've already taken it apart as you can see here, but pretty simple really. You take the front wheel off, front tire and wheel. You have your planetary here. You have to remove this, which basically is pretty simple too. Other than the fact that it took me probably 20 minutes to get the tie rod end off, which required a tie rod end tool. Of course, right there, and a lot of beating and heating, and had to use some penetrating oil. But basically, this planetary's got a rubber O-ring seal on the back of it. It bolts directly onto your axle housing, which would be right here. And the axle itself, which I'll go ahead and show you that too. This is your axle, and it goes in like this. There's my piece that broke off. I was wondering why that was smaller on one end than it is the other. As you can see, the one side is the full diameter. The other side is a little bit smaller. Got to thinking about it. Somebody at work actually brought up the fact that maybe it's made to break like that, so you don't bust out or shell out your entire differential when you do something dumb like what I did. And basically, all this does is just sits up inside here, goes up inside your axle housing. Sure if you can see in there, but there's some splines in there. There's no cotter pins. There's no snap ring or anything to hold that in. It just sits in there. Of course, be sure you have your bucket ready whenever you undo the bottom bolts on that housing there. You will lose quite a bit of fluid. I think I've got maybe a gallon and a half or something like that in the 5-gallon bucket here. Which I'm looking at it. I don't know if there's going to be metal shards in there or not, but I'll look, and if so, I won't reuse it. But I'm probably just reusing it. Another thing, they said, I read somewhere on a forum to go ahead and jack up the tractor, brace it up with the stand as I've done here, and raise it up high enough where when you put the pressure down on that and you pull the wheel and tire off this side, that your axle will kick up to the other side. If your wheel's on the other end here, it'll kick up like that so you don't lose quite as much fluid. So I did that, and it seemed to help a little bit. I'm gonna work on this for a little bit, see if I can get it back together, and we'll show you a little bit as we go along here. Just gonna show you here real quick here. This is where this axle, after it's installed, stick that into the splines of your differential. It goes into this bearing right here. I don't know if you can see the splines, but there's splines inside here. That these male splines will go into the female splines here on this, and I'm gonna go ahead and try to put that on there and get the bolts holding it together. So we got the hub back on and got the bolts secured. One thing I will mention, I believe it's this bolt right here. You can see right there where I had to do a little grinding. That you couldn't get a socket on that originally, so I had to grind that out just a little bit. That weld right there, shouldn't have to do much else with it. Maybe put a little paint on it, keep it from rusting. But that was the only difficult part about getting this off when I originally took it off. Be sure you put your race and bearing in there, as I showed you right before I put this together. And then one way I was going to go ahead and just check it is take it and twist it. Make sure it feels like it's engaged, and it's pretty tight. So got it in 4-wheel drive, so let's look like it's going to work. Get the tie rod end on and putting this thing back up. I want to show you. Go ahead and save that old axle. You might need it. Go to put this tie rod in. You go to tighten this up. The right in here inside this bolt is going to try to spin when you start putting this nut on right here. So what I did was just took the floor jack here that I used to help put that wheel hub back on, put a little pressure on it from the bottom like that. Once you get that pressure on it, you'll be able to turn this like this. Yeah, see, it's able to turn. You're able to turn that on there without your bolt spinning. So make sure it's a good little tip. All right, now for the completed hub. It's all back together except for the spill I had big enough to compared to the Exxon Valdez. When I was pouring it in there, it fell out of my funnel and made a huge mess. But anyway, got all that back together, and this is what it should look like. I'll check for leaks. It's pretty good. When you feel that you're filling this tube right here, fills your axle housing, and eventually it'll come out of this top drain hole right here. Once it comes out of that, you're full. Cap it back off. Put the tire and wheel on, see what it looks like. Put it all back together, let's try it for the test if four-wheel drive works. She's working. Yeah. Good deal. So other than the fact that it took a long time to get the tie rod end off, and the one bolt in the back that I showed that had the that I had to grind off in the back here. This would be this bolt here in line with the axle. Didn't go too bad. One of the hardest parts was getting the cotter pin back in and getting the tire and wheel back on. Other than that, it's a pretty simple fix. 4110 is a good little tractor. Does a good job.